And I want you to think about where you are, relative to the sun, the moon, and the stars. Just think about where you are at in your room, in your living room, or what have you, where you stand or sit relative to the sun, the moon, and the stars. You probably can see the sun right now. You probably can see the moon. This is where you are. So I want you to just go back and, think about the ancients who basically used common sense. They looked up and they seen the sun, felt the power of the sun. They seen the moon, and they know the moon came out, when it was dark. So they understood that whatever they were standing on probably resembles the sun and the moon. And they understood that, the earth has to be, floating there in outer space, just like the sun and the moon, that they can look up and see. And remember, there are also about 5 planets that you can see with the naked eye. So they can see these things and see that, what we are standing on, that we call Earth, or whatever they called it, is possibly the same thing. So again, they use common sense. So you walk the earth for however many years. You have never seen the earth produce a human being, produce an animal. What you know for sure, for certain, is that you come from your mother. Your mother had you, and everybody else came from a woman, a female. Animals come from animals, or what have you. So we know that this earth, this planet that we sitting on, this massive rock, does not produce humans or animals. So that being said, that being the case, of course, obviously we had to be placed here. And this is what they realized. They say, you know what? Something put us here because we don't come from here. And this is what you got to understand. So them back then, not having to worry about, paying bills, they had the time to sit and ponder that very thing. And they looked out into the heavens and they said to themselves, what the fuck is out there? What is going on? Something put us here. Different constellations meant different things to different civilizations, different groups of people. And when you understand the culture, you can understand why they use a lot of the animals and things that they do. But, so they deified these things. And a lot of people, I'm not going to say it was worship. It was just so much as taking notice of what they seen in the heavens. And, we look at stuff as, worship and this and that. It's not, the same to them. Of course, if this constellation is bringing abundance of life or food to my people, then of course I'm going to celebrate every time the sun is in its constellation, so on and so forth. And this is what the ancients did, and they cataloged this stuff. And this stuff is ancient, it's old, and it goes back, very, very far. The understanding of that the sun did land in certain constellations, as well as the moon and the other 5 planets visible to the naked eye. Just to know that, and to have the the mindset to calculate this stuff and to take note of this. And you're gonna find out later why and how. So they did this. This is what the ancients did. And this right here, when you get into astrology or astronomy, this is basically the basis for all religion, across the world. You're going to see that in this video. And that's basically what they did. They deified the constellations and made up stories, and they basically taught with pictures. It was easier this way. We know the ancient Egyptians did the same. They taught with pictures. And it's, a picture is worth 1,000 words. A lot of people say that, but it's easier for you to remember a picture versus, a long word. If I'd rather show you a picture of a rhinoceros than have you remember the word rhinoceros. You know what I'm saying? So it's just easier for you to see that picture, for you to immediately associate that rhinoceros with whatever it does. And this is what they did with the constellations, so people could understand. And it was easier for them to teach it, to the kids. So now, and them looking up into the heavens at the moon and the planets and the sun, of course, the sun would be the most revered, because without the sun, everything dies. All life basically in the universe, in the solar system, I should say, basically dies without the sun, and any life that is. So, the sun was the most revered. It was deified the most, through the civilizations around the world. And, you might had a different name for the sun, depending on, where it appeared, as far as the constellations in the north and the south. If it appeared in the north, it might have been cold. So the sun to you might have represented, a cold god or something like that during that time in the north. In the south, it might be warm. So maybe a warm god. It might represent a different god during that time in the south. So now the thing is, every 11 and a half years, due to the rotation of the sun, we get sunspotting. Now the thing is, when these sunspots begin to form, at first glance, it takes on the form of a winged serpent. So basically a serpent with wings, or this is where you see in Kemet, you see a lot, the winged sun disk or the winged serpent. This is where all this comes from. We're talking about the appearance of sunspots every 11 and a half years. And the first sight of these sunspots takes on the appearance of a winged serpent. So now when you go down to Mexico and you see the pyramid of the flying serpent, and you can see that, they must have took this stuff seriously, or else they wouldn't have built such a, large temple, to the deity, to the snake deity. And, this is something that a lot of people go down to see in Mexico. And I'm going to explain later. I want to get into it right now. But, things like this is what the ancients saw, and they deified all this stuff because to them, you got to really take your mindset off of, today and think about back then, a primitive civilization, not really primitive though. And really spiritual. And that's something I'm going to get into that, we have lost today that they had. And you're going to understand what that is. So, they looked at this stuff and it's something to them. So they build the pyramid. The simple fact that they built it is something that you should be in awe of. And I'm going to get into a while later. Now we know that the winged sun disk is basically an aspect of Ra. So we can see that in the Olmecs, or down in Mexico, the Aztecs, whatever they want to say, whatever they want to call them, is basically, they have their sun gods as well as the Egyptians. So we know about Quetzalcoatl, who is basically the winged serpent. And when you go down to Chichen Itza in Mexico, and of course they have the pyramid down there as well. Now, as I was saying before, all of this, now remember, we're talking about astrology here. We're talking about the sun. This is the sun. A lot of people may think, well, they crazy for spending all them hours building that huge pyramid for, just because sunspots look like a winged serpent. It sounds crazy. It's going to make a lot of sense later. But, as I said, this stuff is the basis of religion. This is where all this stuff comes from. When you look at it, you can find it everywhere. Whenever you find something that's ancient, that has an ancient story attached to it, I guarantee you're going to look in the Bible, the Quran, or Torah, and you're going to find a similar story or somebody trying to rip it off. And it has to always do with religion. So you have Quetzalcoatl, which is the winged serpent that is basically, speaking about the sun. And what a lot of people don't realize is the Mormons believe that Quetzalcoatl is basically the resurrected Jesus Christ. And yes, they actually believe this. So they believe that Jesus basically was in America, and he came and appeared and talked to the neophytes, who they believe were some Indians. The what is they called? The Hopewell Indians. They believe they were the Hopewell Indians. So when you read third Neophyte or Nephi in the Book of Mormon, something we have not touched on in any of my videos, the Book of Mormon and some of these other weird religions, which I'm going to start touching on a little bit more so you can see the fuckery, the foolery, that's in a lot of this stuff and where it comes from. So when you read in third Neophyte, I'm just going to read 12 and 13. Just so you can understand. So it says, Jesus calls the 12 disciples. He delivers to the neophytes a discourse similar to the Sermon on the Mount. He speaks the Beatitudes, which basically is like grace or the benediction. He speaks the Beatitudes. His teachings transcend and take precedence over the law of Moses. Men are commanded to be perfect even as he and his Father are perfect. 13 says, Jesus teaches the neophytes the Lord's Prayer. They are to lay up treasures in heaven. The 12 disciples and their ministry are commanded to take no thought for temporal things. Now, but I want you to pay attention to what he's walking down. I mean, take a look. Now you can see it's a pyramid, and it's basically shaped just like the pyramid in, Chichen Itza, the pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, the serpent of the sun, or the sun serpent, or the winged serpent. So we know what? Jesus is the Son. So Jesus, I mean, they're basically telling you in the Book of Mormon, Jesus is the Son. So here you have Jesus coming down the pyramid, and it's representing Quetzalcoatl, who represents the winged serpent that represents the sunspots that basically is talking about the sun. So it all goes back to the sun. So I want you to understand what we're dealing with here. And you're going to find this a lot. We're going to see this a lot throughout the video. That, as I said, when you start going back and looking at a lot of these stories, these ancient stories, they deal with astrology and have mythological stories and stuff like that. You're going to find Christianity or some religion ripping it off. And you can see just the example here that, they're saying that Jesus is Quetzalcoatl, but they're basically trying to tell you that Jesus is the Son, which we already know that. So now I wanted to read those two verses in the Book of Mormon so that you could understand, what we're dealing with here and what they have done and what they will go through to push this story. I mean, you have a video there that somebody made of these people walking up to Jesus. You're talking about the simple fact that they wrote the Book of Mormon and all the stories that surround Jesus Christ and all these deities. I mean, the links that they went through to sell you on these stories is huge. I mean, these stories are filled with people and all kinds of, actions that they go through, things that they face, trials and tribulations, all surrounding the fact that they're only talking about the Son. I mean, this is what they went through. And when you understand this and you look through it and see that, don't get caught up in the story. As I said, like in an old video, don't get caught up in the story. The story is there to give you a message. If you get caught up in the story and the beauty of it and the hope or whatever it entails, you're going to miss the message. The message is there. It's trying to tell you something outright. Now, for anybody who knew about the, Chichen Itza and Quetzalcoatl and everything like that and understand what it pertains to and see that it's talking about the Son, it's easy for you to make that connection of Jesus and the Son. So when we talk about the whole winged sun disk, a winged sun disk, we know we found it in Kemet. But then when we look at Malachi 4:2, it says here, but unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness, Son, S-U-N, of righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall.